Hey guys, my name is Gillian Perkins. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, it's so nice to meet you. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a peek behind the scenes in my business and sharing with you the 7 or 8 different people who I have hired over the past year or so to build my team and help me grow my business more effectively. For the longest time, I did absolutely everything in my business myself. I'm definitely someone who likes to be in control, and I love learning new things, and so it was just really easy for me to learn what I need to do and then do it myself. And I would fall into that trap that I think so many of us fall into, where we think that we're the only person who can do something as well as we want it to be done, even if we don't think that we are necessarily the best at that thing, and we probably don't. We know that we know what we want, and that it's hard for us to communicate to someone else exactly what we want, and it's also tough to be able to find someone who you can actually depend on. So for a long time I did everything myself, but the more my business has grown, the more I've realized that we can do so much more, we can impact so many more people's lives, we can make so much more money if I'm not doing everything myself, if I'm not bottlenecking the business in that way. And so over this past year or two, I've started to finally grow my team. As you may know, I used to have a different business that I sold going on 2 years ago now, and at that business I did have a whole team, a whole staff in fact, but it was quite a different type of business, and at that business I knew I had to have many different employees who were doing customer service and different things like that. But with my personal brand, I can do almost everything myself, so it's really tempting to try to. Anyway, so I've got my notebook here, and I wrote down a list of the different people who I've hired over the past year so that I can share them with you. So the first person who I hired, I actually hired them about 2 years ago, and that is my photographer. My photographer is Keely K Studios, and it's here where I live. My photographer is actually a great friend of mine who is an amazing photographer, and I'll leave a link to her website down below if you want to check her out. But I started working with her a few years ago. We were trading work actually, and her work is absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that I had her on my team from the early days, because having good quality photographs made it so much easier for me to make my branding materials, my marketing materials actually look good, actually look professional, pretty much from the get-go. I'm someone who doesn't have a very artistic eye. I don't have the best sense of style necessarily, and so having her creative guidance really helped to shape the way my branding looks. And so like I said, I started working with her a few years ago, but it was about 1.5 years or so ago that I actually officially hired her, and now I do photo shoots with her on a regular basis. Okay, the second person who I hired, and I hired this person right about 1 year ago, was my executive assistant. Now, both in my former business and in this business, when I finally got around to hiring an executive assistant, I found that they did something that was so much more valuable than simply taking a little bit off my plate. They gave me someone to delegate to. Now, when I try to do everything myself, it's easy for me to get overwhelmed and procrastinate on things, but when I have someone who I know I can delegate to, those tasks that seem just a little bit too overwhelming, or maybe even just a little bit too boring, I know that there's someone else there who is eager to have that work so that they can get paid to do that work, and it really takes the burden off my shoulders of feeling like I have to do everything myself. So not only is there literally less on my plate to do, but it also removes some stress, which allows me more creative freedom. The third person who I hired a little bit less than 1 year ago now was my video editor. And for the first year of running my YouTube channel, I was always editing the videos myself. And when I first started, I did not know much about editing videos at all. But over time, I learned more and more. But there were still some things, specifically related to creating motion graphics, like when you see the text show up and move in different ways on the screen, that I didn't know how to do very well. And so every time I needed to create something like that, it took me way more time than it should, and a lot of Googling and a lot of watching YouTube tutorials. And so it was just kind of inefficient, and my videos weren't being edited as well as I wanted them to be. And if you haven't edited videos before, you might not realize, but editing videos takes an enormous amount of time. And so that was something I was spending hours and hours every single week on, and that's time that I could spend doing things that I'm better at. And so that's why I chose to bring a video editor onto the team, and I'm so glad that I did, because in addition addition to creating videos here on YouTube, I also create a lot of video content for my online courses that I make. And normally when I'm making one of those courses, I'm making 20, 25, sometimes even more video lessons that go into those courses. And I have to do that within the time period of just a couple of months. And that really would be an overwhelming amount of work for me to try to get done on top of the other works that I'm already doing. So video editor has been a huge blessing on our team. The next person I hired was a bookkeeper. Now, I've done my own books for forever, and it always really seemed easier to me to do my own books because it seemed like if I had a bookkeeper, I would just have to communicate all of the information about purchases I made and money that came in to the bookkeeper, so I would have to be handling it anyway, and I'd have to be explaining everything to someone else, whereas if I just knew it myself, it seemed easier. But having a bookkeeper served really two important purposes. One is it helped me be a lot more organized with my books. So sometimes when I would get busy, I would not keep the best records of my finances. But having a bookkeeper ensures that stuff is continually staying organized and also that it's organized in the right way. And then the second thing is just accountability. Because I know that someone else is doing my books for me, I can be much more on top of always getting that information to them so that the books really stay up to date. The fifth person who I brought onto my team this past year was a graphic designer. Now, prior to this, I was doing all the graphic design myself also. Like I said, I was doing everything myself. Now, I'm definitely not a graphic designer. As I mentioned before, I don't have the best artistic sense or creative ability. So it was definitely a stretch for me to be doing that. But again, I thought, well, I know what I want and I don't know how to tell someone else what I want, so it's easier for me to just do it myself. However, I always spend way too much time on graphic design, and often the graphics didn't look as professional as I wanted them to. So I'm really glad that I brought a graphic designer onto the team, both because it's saving me a ton of time and also because things are looking more and more professional around here. The next person who I hired was a copywriter. And just in case you don't know what a copywriter is, it's just someone who writes copy, and copy is normally marketing text. So this is the sort of text that you'd see on the back of a cereal box, or in a Facebook ad, or on a website, or in a marketing email that you might get from a company. All of that is considered copy. And again, I've always done all the copywriting for my business myself. And full disclaimer, I still do 90 to 95% of it myself. But my website has gotten very out of date over the past couple of years. Now, you might not notice when you first go there because it looks pretty modern, I would say, and a lot of it still relates to exactly what I talk about here on this channel. But there's just some things that are out of alignment. My mission with the business has changed a little bit, and I'll be talking more about that in future videos. But there's just been a lot of shifts over the past couple years as my business has developed further, and I figured out how to better serve you guys, my audience. And so the website has gotten more and more out of date, but it's a pretty big site, and it was really overwhelming me to think about the project of rewriting every single part of my site, just because there's so many pieces and they all have to work together. So for a while, I was procrastinating on it. I was waiting to get more clarity, but also waiting to feel like I had a big chunk of time that I could tackle that project. And of course, I never feel like I have that big chunk of time because when I do have that time, I want to take a break and relax. So it just was not getting done. And so that was why I chose to hire a copywriter to help me actually write the website. She's also helping me write some of my marketing emails. And this is another thing where I didn't think I could effectively communicate to someone else exactly what I wanted, but it's actually working out really well because I can pretty much tell her all of the facts and the details in bullet points or however I want to communicate to her, and then she can turn it into flowing sentences that work together and sound nice. Like I said, I still do 90 to 95% of the writing in my business. I love writing, I'm decent at it, and it's so important to me to continue to communicate directly with my audience. It really wouldn't work for me in my type of business to have someone else talking to my audience for me. I just want to have that direct connection with you guys, and so that's why I'm going to continue to do most of the writing in my business, but having a copywriter come on board for this big project and probably with some of our future launches is so helpful. Okay, the 7th person on my list that I hired this past year was a web developer. And it's actually a whole web development agency. And what they're doing right now is they're helping me build a new website for Startup Society. Startup Society is my online community for action-taking entrepreneurs, and we launched it earlier this year. It's been going fantastic, and it has a website that's right now tied to my main website very directly, but we are giving it its own brand new home with brand new branding, and I just saw a sneak peek of it this morning for the very first time, and it looks fantastic, so I'm so excited about that. So excited to be able to give the members an even better experience. And the reason that I chose to hire a web developer to do this project for me, even though I actually have a background in web development myself, is because it is a very time-consuming project. And similar to rewriting my own personal website, it was a project that I felt like I never had time for, but it was something that I knew was very important to get done because I wanted to give the members the best experience possible. So I brought them on board to do a lot of the legwork for me, and also just to be my partner in the project so that we made sure that it got done in a timely fashion. Okay, and then the final person that I hired this last year, and actually just really recently here, is my online business manager, otherwise known as an OBM. Now, this is really similar to a project manager, except that instead of just managing a specific project or one specific project at a time, they're actually managing all of the projects that relate to running my online business, and they're working remotely, so they're in a different state than I am. Sometimes this position is called someone else. They could be called your Chief Operations Officer, your COO, or they could be called your integrator. But all of these roles do essentially the same thing. Basically, they help me take my vision for the business, my ideas, and they work with me to create practical plans, which is something that I always do myself, but it's really nice to do it with someone else who can kind of poke holes in your ideas and maybe bring you back down to earth a little bit, make you think a little bit more realistically. And then after that, this is where the magic really happens, is that then they take responsibility for making sure that all the boxes get checked off to actually complete that project. Now, whether other people on my team end up doing the work to complete the project, or even if I end up doing most of it myself, simply having the responsibility for managing the project in someone else's hands takes such a weight off my shoulders, because those are decisions I don't have to make, those are things I don't have to stress or worry about, and those are things that I don't have to be constantly remembering and trying to get done. So it's just one less thing on my to-do list, one less thing that isn't occupying my mental space, and it is such a help. Alright, well those are the 8 different people that I have hired in my business over the past year or two. I thought it might be interesting for you to see exactly what my team looks like, exactly how the company is growing, and what roles each of these different people fulfills, and why it is so valuable to the growth of the company. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my next video. I make a video every single Tuesday and Thursday all about entrepreneurship, success, and personal development, and if you liked this one, then you probably want to subscribe so you don't miss the next one either. If you liked this video, of course, hit that like button to let me know. And as always, I hope you are having an amazing week, and I really look forward to seeing you again next time.